Hey there traders, this is Jeff from the Stock Bandit, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to look at some of the market momentum leaders. Now, as you know, the NASDAQ, the Russell, they're starting to break down from their short-term trading ranges, whereas the S&P 500 and the Dow are both kind of hanging for now in their short-term trading ranges. And so it's a market where you've really got to be very careful and pick and choose your spots. In terms of the momentum names, the big cap, high beta stocks, there are a few here that we're going to go through. We're going to look at Apple and Google, Chipotle, Amazon, Priceline, Baidu, and F5 Networks. So just kind of walking through a few of these heavily traded names, I think that we can point out a few things that are very useful and helpful in the short term. So for Apple, obviously this thing got out of this trading range here. It got up through the 700 level, but only briefly, couldn't hold it, sold off, and every little bounce has been sold since then. Now, today, meaning Wednesday, Apple bounced a little bit, but take a look at how limited the upside was. This thing was up 5 points, less than 1%. Volume was very anemic, especially compared to kind of the 3-day decline volume that we saw ahead of that. And now this is just looking a little bit dead cat. We had kind of the intraday rebound yesterday, and we saw a little bit of follow through today, but no conviction here on the close. This thing still finished some 5 points or 4 points and change off the high of the day. We've got a little bit of an unfilled gap right here, which goes to 652, and then obviously we've got this 655 area, 656 that had been some support right in through here, and that's likely to pose us some resistance. So if we can rally back up and fill this gap to this 653 area and then get toward this 655, you can bet that there's likely going to be some sellers there as people miss their exit right in here, and that may pose as some short-term resistance now that it was former support and it has been broken. So be very careful here with Apple. This rebound so far is only 1 day underway, and it's definitely far from impressive. Google has really held up extremely well. It's made a tremendous move higher here for the past few months and really kind of almost went parabolic. We didn't quite get that blow off top. So this thing pushed through this 765, 66 area, but it saw very limited progress through there, especially on a closing basis. The high was 768 on a closing basis, and then we've since fallen down here a little bit. And here again, today this thing bounced. It was up 47 cents on pretty quiet volume, so not real impressive yet. And this ascending triangle pattern, which attempted to get resolved to the upside, it's now been failed with this move back below it. So we can go ahead and get rid of these trend lines here because they're no longer valid. What we need to do here is just kind of identify some new support and resistance zones. We can kind of just consider this to be a trading range for Google and just kind of eyeball these levels here. So price has retreated to the lower end of the range. It looks like it may need a little bit more time to continue moving laterally, so be very careful with how you handle Google. Chipotle, Mexican Grill, CMG. We've got some well-defined support down here around 277 and 278. We've come down to that area a couple different times. That's the big level to watch. Watch this 277. This thing has sold off. It's attempted to bounce. It had no ability to do so. It continued lower. It's tried to bounce in recent days. Hardly any lift at all. So this is just looking kind of like a low-level consolidation. If we break 277, look for more sellers to emerge. Amazon, which had held up extremely well, broke out of its trading range today, undercut this support zone right in here. That was the this 248 area. So we got a good solid close below there. We're also seeing volume pick up here the last couple sessions. This is a little bit of a concern for the NASDAQ especially, as this is another stock which had been showing leadership, had been acting really well. Now it's starting to break down and negate what had been a bullish consolidation with this high-level trading range, with resolving that to the downside. So obviously Amazon spelling caution as well. Priceline, here's a stock that had this big gap lower here back in early August. It then kind of worked its way back up to fill the bulk of that gap. It didn't quite fill the entire thing, but we got to about here. And then this thing kind of started working laterally, and that's not bad. In fact, it even pulled back a little bit, started to rally, and then it failed right here a few days ago shy of this resistance level and has now started to roll over with a little bit more momentum here, getting some very weak finishes here. Volume is starting to pick up a little bit, and that's definitely another sign of concern. So really no leadership out there. Baidu, here's another stock which had sold off, bounced, sold off again, and then kind of entered this rising wedge pattern here, and that's been resolved to the downside. Today this thing attempted to rebound, but really didn't make hardly any progress. Really essentially just posted an inside day, and a lot of times those end up being continuation bars from the move before. So yesterday was a hard decline on heavy volume. Today was a little bit of a dead cat bounce. Maybe we see this thing continue lower and head back down to test this low back here from July around 99,100. And then finally there's F5 Networks, which was really the type of stock that had been poised for some pretty good recovery. It had sold off hard and then kind of spent a few months here kind of moving laterally. We had kind of this low level range. You could even make a case for a left shoulder and a head and then a right shoulder, and then this right here would be the neckline. And as we cleared that 105 area, price came down, it tested it a number of times and held above it until this week, and now it has obviously given up that 105 level and now looks like it's poised to come back down and test this 94 area at the very least, maybe all the way back down into this low back here from this 88 area from July. So here's another stock that had been acting pretty well and now it's breaking down. So be really careful out there. This market is lacking leadership. It is a little bit short-term stretch to the downside. Maybe we get a bounce, but in terms of some of these high beta names, they now need to spend a little bit more time basing. There's really none of them at this point which are looking like high quality setups. So be very selective out there. Be patient. Let some of them rebuild, and then we're going to have plenty of opportunities. Thanks for joining me for this video. I will have more for you soon, but until then, trade like a bandit.